Welcome to Beauty and the Gi, the podcast about jiu-jitsu and life on and off the mat. I'm Jen Eads, a white belt full of curiosity and questions about all the things jiu-jitsu.
And I'm AJ Klingerman, a Brazilian jiu-jitsu brown belt, still obsessed with jiu-jitsu.
And we have some very special guests today, don't we?
Yeah, I'm very excited. So one of our guests is Jess Sunier. And Jess, you have heard us talk about a million times on the podcast.
She's actually been on the podcast, so welcome back.
Exactly, welcome back. Also, she's, one of the people that tortures me on a regular basis through lifting weights. So, and by tortures, I mean, helps me get stronger.
Right.
But yeah, so we're happy to have her back. And then also Miss Torrie O'Neill, who runs the Mighty Dames. So welcome to the podcast, ladies.
Hey, thanks for having us. I feel so special.
I'm so excited about this one.
Me too. This will be really good. So one of the reasons we have them on today is that they are both doing a workshop together at Role Model Camp this year. And they're doing a workshop on like how to create a better environment, a safer space for everyone on the mat.
Jess, why is it important to you to create affirming spaces?
For me, it's very important to create an affirming space for people, because in my experiences, people who maybe have never thought about doing jiu-jitsu or didn't feel safe doing it or didn't feel safe or comfortable lifting weights, they have a space now. So we're introducing so many athletes to the bar and the mats.
How about you, Torrie?
Part of my reason is I feel like a lot of the people who benefit from learning martial arts come from marginalized communities. And unfortunately, a lot of these communities are ones where they just don't have much exposure to jiu-jitsu. Like, for instance, I'm one of the only Black people in my gym. And it's not rare. You see that it's not a combat sport that people are accustomed to joining. So when I first joined it, one of my first things to do is like get my mom and my sister in there just for one class to show them, because they're both, women in the South, and they need to learn how to protect themselves, even if they only know little parts of it. So for me, creating an affirming space is important because you're welcoming in people who can benefit the most from that type of training. And if it's not welcoming, if they're already not going to know what this space is, and the first time they get there, there's no one like them, there's no one welcoming them in, they're even more likely to quit and not to come back.
I think that Rissa and I talked about having you guys do this workshop at camp last year. And we were just like, we need something that, a big thing for us is that you belong with us. Like, you belong here at this camp. And I want everyone to feel welcome. And so we thought that would be a good workshop to just show how to make people feel more welcome on the mat or in our gyms, like just changing those small and big things that happen in your gym that like deter people from coming or from staying or from inviting their friends. Because sometimes people come up and, they'll say, I really wanted to invite my friend to my gym, but I just don't think it's a safe space for them. Like, how do I navigate that? So, we talked about it, and I know you guys knew each other, but we just thought that you two would be great for this. I've seen Jess's work with her gym, Torrie, you with the Mighty Dames, like you starting that, like just a way to make the bigger girls feel more welcome on the mat. So I think it's everything, like every bit of it from every different type of person and why they need that place where they feel welcome.
Yeah, Jess is like my new buddy now. Like,
yeah,
we bug each other all the time. But yeah, I think we met a couple months before through the Mighty Dames.
Yep.
And it's funny because we both say this. We met when we were at the Role Model Camp. We both kind of sat down in the same area. We're looking like, is that her? Like, that's her. It's like, okay, we need to break the ice. And I think I had my wallet down, and I have I'm a Trekkie. I have a Trekker. I have my wallet down, and she looks like, hey, nice wallet. I was like, now we can talk about this.
Nerd stuff first, and then yeah, that always works.
That's awesome. It's a great partnership so far.
Yeah, that's very good. It's very good. So I'd like to talk a little bit. So I was listening to Gretchen Rubin's Happier podcast, and they were interviewing a couple girls that run a company and wrote a book called Just Work, where they were talking about the difference between bias, prejudice, and bully. And I thought it was really interesting to like hear them talk about, the way they put it was like bias is you don't mean something, or prejudice is you mean it. And then bully is you're mean. And I thought that was a really good way to like kind of differentiate. But how can we, as upstanders instead of bystanders, how can we help create better spaces when there's people that have these biases or prejudices or bully? Like, what are good ways for us to create a better space?
So I'll talk from the perspective of somebody who runs a business, somebody also white, cis, which means I identify with the gender or the sex I was assigned with at birth. So with that said, I have a lot of opportunities to have these talks and to confront these things without with less threat. Because as a woman, I mean, let's be real, in my gym, I know every exit and I know where every knife is in my gym, like no matter who comes into my space. And that's just something that we are kind of like brought up with. But what people don't know about me is I identify as queer, and people don't know that about me because I'm married to Chris. So it provides, from an LGBTQIA perspective, it opens also a lot more doors for me as far as experiences. So in my gym, it allows me the opportunity to confront unconscious bias, or, things that people don't really know that they are potentially causing harm to a group of people. And I get to have these talks from the perspective of, hey, we're going to unpack kind of what you just said, and this is your opportunity and your space to maybe unlearn what you're doing. And we give people multiple opportunities. The easiest one that I can think of is using pronouns correctly. That's the biggest one. We get no pushback in our gym with that anymore, because that's what our gym is. We don't even have, we have a women's class, but we really don't also have a women's class, because majority of people in there, it's such a mixture of non-binary and femme presenting, cis men, cis women, hetero. It doesn't, we're all in there and we're all cool with each other. So we don't have really those separate subgroups. So a lot more of the stuff that we confront is when maybe people come in from other schools. We have our flags hanging all the time. We have multiple people in the LGBTQIA community as coaches as well. So it's representative as a coach.
I think it's very important that we just change the culture from a positive standpoint, right? I think confrontation is usually not the way we create change. When there's confrontation, we tend to dig our heels in, and I don't think that's how you create change. I think you create change by showing people the right way. And, I'm very big on, loving people where they are. And, I don't care who you are. I'm going to love you. And so showing that, I think, helps other people create that love as well. So how do you, advise people to kind of pave the way, I guess?
If you would have asked me pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, you would have got two different answers. I just want to throw that out there right now. I agree that confrontation is not always the best way, but I do think that it has a powerful role. One of my biggest things is for unconscious bias to be a thing. Again, we say it's unconscious. It's not unlearned. So these are things that we have developed over a period of time where we're not even, it's so deeply ingrained in ourselves and our society that we don't even realize how big of an impact that it has. So for us to address those issues, it takes a bit of humility from everyone around to realize that I am not right. There are things that no matter what I think, they might be offensive to other people. They might not be correct. I think all of us can agree, if we look back to our early 20s and we think of things that we believed and we look at them now, we're like, oh no, that's not. Even me, who I've considered myself a fairly liberal person most of my life. I can look back on, memories on Facebook when certain things come up. I'm like, delete.
I don't even like 22-year-old Jess. I was like, I would not be friends with her at all.
Not at all. And it wasn't because I was a horrible person or that I was intentionally malicious, is that I was ignorant. And I say ignorance a lot, and I don't mean it as an insulting way. I mean, I lacked knowledge and information. So for someone like myself who is, I'm Black, I say queer, but I'm a lesbian. Someone like me, especially living in somewhere like the South, I feel like I have to, it's exhausting because I have to, one, be a representative of a lot of different groups, but I also have to make sure that I don't make myself the token. It's a very hard line to ride.
How do you do that?
That's where the confrontation comes out. because ideally, when people, I'm talking about white people, when you want someone as a token, or I'm talking about straight people, cisgendered people, when you want a token for a marginalized community, you want them to be pleasant, you want them to be non-confrontational, you want them to be approachable. And I am all of those things, but I also don't take a lot of nonsense. I don't have time for willful ignorance, and I don't take disrespect or lack of accountability. Those are hard no's for me. So on one end, we may have some boys at our gym who come in, who, those 18, 19, 20-year-olds, they might just don't have most PC language. I understand that's a hard age. But me, coming from the bag of, marginalized communities that I come from, I feel like I'm going to say something to them, not in a harsh way, but I'm like, hey, we don't say that anymore. That's not a good thing to say. But the relationship that I've developed with those people, because I've been a good role model, a good representation of mine, they take me a little bit more seriously. They kind of like, oh, my bad, I didn't know that. And they stop. So if I've told them once or twice, like, hey, you can't say you haven't been taught. You can't say someone hasn't approached it to you. Now you're choosing to be disrespectful. And then that's when the confrontational Torrie comes up, because now you have to sometimes remind people that while you are in their community, I'm their teammate, I'm your friend, I am also a member of a marginalized community. So when you say disparaging things, you're saying them, generally, unilaterally, you're including me in that. So when you make it personal for people, say like, hey, when you say things about trans people, hey, when you say things about Black people, hey, when you say things about gay people, you're including me into that conversation. So if you don't think that of me, you've known me for years, and you would never say any of those things about me, how do you feel comfortable saying that about an entire group? You got to make people think about it, because I'm rambling, but
no, you're doing great. And I think that's a great point too. Like, and like I say, I'm not confrontational, but I will absolutely be like, we don't say that, that's not appropriate here. Like a lot of times it's like, I don't think people say that anymore. I don't think that we do that. Like, we're moving on. So I will absolutely call people out in that manner. And I think that if it got to a point where it's happening again and again, then yes, I would be more confrontational, but I don't feel like I start that way. Like, I feel like I start by just trying to pave the way, I guess.
Yeah, it depends on the degree of the disrespect. Mm-hmm. At first it's like, what word did you say?
Right. Yeah.
What context did you say it? How close am I to my period? That all depends on how I'm going to respond to you. You catch me on a good day, I'm like, hey, that's not right. If you catch me on a bad day, I was like, what the? Really? Oh, we're doing this today. Okay, let me tell you why. So, I mean, again, because I am not a perfect person, I'm going to mess up with my delivery. I might not always have the perfect message, and I'm definitely not the perfect messenger. So I have to realize within myself that even though I am Black, even though I am queer, I'm going to be the wrong party sometimes. So again, we have to be honest with ourselves about where we stand. Where are our biases? Where are areas that we might feel uncomfortable sometimes? Me and my older sister, we joke around a lot, but it's sad. It's not, but we always say like the thing that we're most afraid of in this world are white men. We say it jokingly, but like, history and our experiences have showed us those are people who have been some of the harshest towards us. So I have to be aware that sometimes when I am around a large group of white men, which is very often in jujitsu, my detectors come up just because, I haven't always had the best experience with that group. And I try to make sure that doesn't jade how I am judging the entire group, because my coach is a white male and he's one of the best people I've ever met. So everyone has their own biases. I believe we all have to be open with them and realize that just because we have them does not mean they have to remain. They can constantly be changed.
I want to play a little bit off of what Torrie was saying when she was talking about, like, what you were asking, how do you not become the token marginalized group in your gym? And like, a lot of my perspective is like, there is some personal perspective, but like, again, I go through the world like this. Therefore, I get away with quite a lot. So from a business perspective, if you're just a member of a gym, or if you have even some pull, or if you're trying to start something at your gym, there is a difference between being inclusive and being diverse. Diversity to me is like you're ticking off a checklist. You're like, oh, I got my Black friend. I got my Asian friend. I got my gay friend. I got my queer.
Got one of those.
Yep. Those too. The checkbox, which we see a lot of companies do, actually, right? Like, if you truly were interested in the LGBTQI community, why don't you have pride shirts up year round? Why don't you have binders in shops for people to bind down their chests? Like, why aren't these things just part of what we're doing, or just part of the conversation? And I think that's where I wanted to go with it is, if you want to really start in your gym, not only does it have to be in the contracts, we have no gendered terms in our contracts whatsoever. There are some forms where we ask you, hey, are you on any type of maybe added hormone? Because not everyone who is on a hormone is trans. Like, it could be a number of things. And we don't say, what are your preferred pronouns? Like, what are your pronouns? It's not like, hey, Jess, what's your preferred name? It's like, well, it's Jess. Like, I don't want to be called this, and I don't want to be called this. I'm Jess. So not only is it in our business lingo, like the contracts, not only is it said with our coaches, and not only is it represented in our gym, but something you can do just as a person is, if somebody makes a mistake with pronouns, I will always default to, you did not know what their pronouns were. So you said what you saw. Okay. But then if I'm truly trying to take these steps, and you're going to have that anxious feeling in your gut because you might have confrontation, like it's not going to feel good. All right. But you just stand up and you say they, them. Like, are you standing up for your non-binary friends outside of just your circle? Like, are you standing up for your trans friends? And also, just because you're non-binary does not mean you're trans. And just because you're trans does not mean that you use binary terms like her and him. There is an umbrella out there. There is a bigger world out there. And man, if we could just tap into it, like,
yep.
If we could just be cool and tap into it, because you don't have to put anyone into a hierarchical caste system to make yourself feel better. We're all just trying to roll, and we're all just trying to lift. So rant over.
We're ranty gals, just so you haven't realized.
Listen.
Well, going back to language, because I think, and I even find myself struggling with this, especially as far as like trans and LGBTQIA, and like within our own community, I've seen people say, oh, we don't say that anymore, or now it's this. And I feel like some of that just might depend on the person and
absolutely
where they are with that. So how can we to even invite these conversations? Because I think a lot of people are like, I don't even want to talk about it because I don't want to offend anybody, because I don't know what those right words are. And I don't want to look dumb and be offensive. So how can we create that space? Because I think a lot of people want to join that conversation. They maybe just don't know how, or they're scared of offending someone.
I think you got to be okay with looking dumb.
There it is.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
I've mastered that.
I'm about to say I looked so silly when I started jujitsu. I looked, man, I have real weird proportions where I'm all legs and arm and a short torso. So I was flailing through the air. I looked so weird and I looked dumb. There's like, looking dumb is momentary. Like it's quick. Okay, I look dumb then, now it's over. So don't be afraid to look dumb. And you need to have these conversations with people that you trust and that you're completely open with what we're about to talk about. Be upfront about your knowledge and your limitations. Like, hey, I want to have a conversation about trans people. I don't know any trans people. I might say some words that are wrong. I might say some stuff that's inappropriate. Tell me if it's inappropriate so I don't say it again. Think of it similarly like when we're talking about women and their bodies and size, right? You want to ask, men know off the bat, they know certain things they're not going to ask a woman about their size because it's deemed inappropriate. How did they learn that? They said something stupid and someone checked them for it, right? So take that approach. It's like, okay, I want to ask some questions. I really want to know. I don't know where to start. I may say some stuff that offends you, and then be okay if that person does not want to engage in a conversation with you. I'm not down with unpacking all of my traumas every time to educate another person. By the end of this pandemic, with all the things we have with racial tension, I got to a point where it's like, it is not my job to educate white people when they can look on Google. I'm not going to do it. But after that passed, there were certain people in my life who I was like, okay, you're asking me a question. I can answer it. It's more important for me to let you know from my personal experience, because I might be the only Black or queer person and you might not know who else to ask. Mm-hmm. So I've started to take that approach to it, because I can't get mad at someone for being ignorant. I have the knowledge, but I'm refusing to do it because they pissed me off. It's like, if they're coming at me respectfully, like they're from a genuine place, I feel like it's my obligation to give them a genuine reply.
Yeah.
I've had an experience like being a coach. Being a coach in a larger body, you can call it a fat body, whatever you like. I think fat gets too much of a negative term.
Thick girls.
Yeah. We'll call it thick. But, I've had people approach me. They're like, oh, I didn't know that you were a coach. I thought you would look like this. I thought you would look like this or that. Or I've had, I don't want to work with you because I don't want to look like you. And it's just like, you don't work hard enough to look like me. So it's not
good luck.
So you wish.
I can. Yeah, exactly. It's just like, well, it's not going to happen because you already have that attitude about it. So we're just clearly you're not a good fit for what's going on with how I teach. But yeah, it's just having that comfort with yourself. I mean, I made a post just the other day that I was unpacking 34 years of diet culture and counting macros and being super strict and not enjoying life and not even enjoying food. And then people around me being like, Jess, why can't we go eat here? They have really, really good food. I'm like, well, if I look at the menu, it doesn't include, but why are you doing this? And I didn't have a good answer anymore. I don't even think I had a good answer before. No, I'm pretty sure my answer was before was I need to conform to fit the mold that is my industry, our industry. And then I just kind of said, F it. And I was like, this is how I look. And I'm stronger than I've ever been. I'm a brown belt in jujitsu. Like I know stuff. I'm decent. I've competed at high levels. So why am I so concerned with not speaking up and just kind of being done with people assuming things just by looking at me, people assuming things about my health, about my knowledge, my education, if I'm a good coach or not a good coach, any of those things, because again, that's how we place people in our world. We take a look at them and we go, probably not, because society says this is what it looks like. You're not thin, your teeth aren't straight, your hair is not like a nice blonde or brunette. Also, AJ has like all these qualities. So I'm looking at AJ, I'm like, oh, well, I'm not naming off AJ stuff, but like, what society seems as like, kind of like
acceptable.
Normal and acceptable. And this is what health looks like, so yeah, I think if you're going to be prepared with creating these spaces, do you have that space within yourself first? Do you have that it's bravery, it's courageous, but also it's kind of almost like you have to get to that point of just like, F it, and nobody else who looks like you gets these choices to not have to constantly stand up for themselves day after day, hour after hour. So why aren't you doing it?
Yep.
And when you get to that point, all of a sudden it's just like, oh, you don't affect my income. You don't affect any of these things. I'm not concerned about this anymore. So yeah, let's do it.
Nice.
Confirm.
So what can we expect from your session at camp this summer?
Madness, honestly. Oh, one thing for sure you can expect is Torrie's going to be up there in some shorts because I'm throwing thighs.
Sweet. Decide that we're both wearing the shorts. Yeah. Because we got some big thighs and we need to, put up a quote. Oh, if it doesn't clap while I stride or something like that. I don't know.
Listen, I've been clapping since high school, man. These things don't go away.
Say, like, if you guys don't clap for us, we'll clap for ourselves. It's fine.
Hello. But yeah, so some of the things we're going to be talking about, and Jess, you can add your bit too if I'm completely talking madness. When AJ approached us, there was 3 things she really wanted us to focus in on, and that's going to be race, sexuality, but gender identity as well, and size. And they might seem like very broad topics, but what all of them have in common is people tend to judge you based on those 3 things very harshly. And even within the jiu-jitsu and fitness community as a large, with jiu-jitsu, we love to say that jiu-jitsu is for everybody. But if you look in most gyms, they look very, very similar. Everyone is not in those gyms. So our whole thing with Create Space is how do we create areas where more people feel comfortable training and that the people who are hosting these classes feel comfortable teaching them. So they don't feel like we're making them a token. We're not fetishizing them. We're giving quality training to them, and that we're being understanding and knowing our own biases and how this might change our gym dynamics. It might change our business practices, but is it worth it? Is it something we're going to buy into? And why is it so important to do?
Like these are going to be some very, very heavy topics, I feel, for people, because it's not the fun stuff that we want to talk about. It's, it's just not stuff that we want to talk about. Well, me and Torrie do. We're all about it.
Oh, God, I love to talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
AJ, you've seen my Facebook. I love to talk about this stuff.
But they are things, it's going to make some people think, it's going to upset some people, and we're prepared for that. Like that's what we deal with on different levels every single day. Like I get pushback with our gym. I've had things thrown at me, like when you're so inclusive that you're exclusive. I'm like, I'm not excluding anybody. I think you just feel uncomfortable in here. And you have to ask yourself why you feel uncomfortable, because we have never slammed people. It's usually white cis men that have said these things to me that well, you can't exclude people. I'm like, well, we're not excluding anyone. We're just holding you accountable for things that you shouldn't say. You shouldn't say. So there's that talk that we're going to address on the stage as well.
I'll say I've been called everything under the sun on social media. I've been called a race baiter, a man hater, crazy feminist. I've been called a Marxist, but I don't think people really know what Marxism is.
I don't think people
nobody knows at all. Because I screenshot everything and I share it. I don't care. I've been called the N-word multiple times just because of the stances that I take. I mean, I've been called every derogatory term from a gay woman you can think of. And I always screenshot, you're proving my point right now. What are you doing? But again, that's something that I've had to accept, because for as much negative as I've gotten more positive. And I've gotten a lot of people who did not know who to come to, did not know how to ask certain questions, who genuinely wanted knowledge. But like you said, I'm not here to say that it's not hard for people, for like white people to not understand, especially when you come from a genuine place, because you want to help, but you don't know how to help without seeming like, white saviory.
Right.
And you don't want to like take over the conversation, but it's a weird spot. I get that way with learning more about trans and non-binary people. Like, I'm in the community, but like, it's a different struggle. So I don't want to put myself in the center of it. But at the same time, I can educate myself. I can educate people like me, because it is easier for AJ, Jen, Jess. It's going to be easy for you guys to reach out to white people and to talk to them about issues of race than it is for me. Because I'm Black, I'm automatically going to be seen like it's coming from a biased position. It's going to be easier for some of us to talk about queer LGBTQ issues than straight people, because we're going to be perceived as coming at it from a bias. So like, my younger sister's straight. I'll talk to her about that, and she shares it with her friends who didn't know, but they're going to listen to her more because they have a better connection. So what we really want to do with Create Space is find ways to make those connections that, each person, they're becoming a token now. Like, we've had it our whole life. Now you're becoming the token, educated person that you're going to go back to your people and tell them what you learned, and tell them why you learned it, why this is so important. And if you truly, truly want to grow in an inclusive way, these are tools that you can use. If you want to stick to the same stuff look, I've always said, like, there's nothing I appreciate more in this world than an honest racist, an honest sexist, an honest homophobe. Just be it, and don't get upset when people call you that. Just stick to your guns. If you're not going to, shut up, because you're not being honest. If you want to have a strictly, predominantly whitish gym, mostly male, you don't really want to deal with women. You want an athletic, you don't want a certain body type. Be honest about that, so that there's no confusion. That's what we're about here, is honesty and accountability.
Yeah. For me, like a big mission for me with the role models is just to make people feel like they belong. I think a lot of us feel like we don't belong, like in our families, in our gyms, like sometimes even in our friend circle. Like we struggle with feeling like we belong. And I want everyone at camp to feel like they belong. And I want them to go home with tools to help others feel like they belong as well.
Even with the Mighty Dames, with the group, I've had people before they joined the group, that's the first thing they asked me, like, hey, are you guys, it's funny, like, are you guys inclusive of like Black people's like, have you seen my profile?
Nah.
Yeah. Nah, no Black people allowed. Or they'll ask, the big one is they'll ask if it's LGBTQ inclusive. I'm like, yeah, big old Les over here. Come on, join us. But not all groups are exclusive until they realize they're exclusive, So like how she mentioned, looking for that. When I first started jujitsu, I was very, very careful about where I was going to go, who I was going to go with, and where I was going to train, because you don't know how people are going to respond to that. And it's funny, once they found out my gym, they're like, oh, I can see that. And that was like the extent of the conversation. But at the same time, I had to, even when I go travel places now, when I first started out, I had to like be okay with it, and then realize that when I go into certain spaces, I might not hear language that I like. And like I said, there's some gyms that I will never step foot in again because of the language I heard from multiple people. And there's other gyms that I know I can, come there at my girlfriend hanging off my side. They be like, hey, what's up? Like, I know where I feel comfortable and where I'm not.
Yeah.
Also, when you start to say it out loud, when it's out there, it's easier to stand up to it. It's easier.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm aligning my business with this, then your business, like you didn't buy a franchise. We know this. Like we know this with Mighty Dames. Jen, you know this with Brassy Broadcasting. Okay.
Love the name. Awesome name.
And we know this with role models. Like it's so personal to us that if you say these things out loud, it gets easier to do it every time because you have to stand up to what your brand is.
So I was talking to Shama with Girls and Geese, and that's kind of the situation that they came across as well. Is she was like, they were balancing that? How do I say that I'm for something while doing the brand was for it? And I think with all the craziness that happened last year, if you look at their page and their website and all that, they put out more stuff about the LGBTQ community, more specific things about like the BIPOC community, about various sides. They've done more of that in the last year than I think I've seen ever before. And they came, when I asked Shama about it, we did an interview with her, she was like, yeah, I just felt like like you said, like we're inclusive, we're for everybody. And apparently if you don't say that, their idea of what everyone is much, much more limited than we initially thought.
Yep. It's like, oh, maybe, gay men and gay women and, cis men. Torrie, it's something I do want to do on the platform. Like I do want to kind of provide a handout that says, here are all the updated terms. So if you're unsure that we're going to use on stage, here's your guide. Here's Here's a good like we like no. Don't say that. It's from the 50s. We don't use that.
I work with before I was like my last job, I was a volunteer manager, and man, I worked with the 65 plus community. It's called the Villages. If you guys don't know about it, it's where a bunch of wealthy people come down to Florida. They live there. It's weird. It's a weird place. It's really freaking weird.
What this is?
Man, I'd had volunteers say colored still. I had volunteers say Orientals. It's not a good look. It's not a good look. And I was like,
okay.
Torrie, do you have an on the mat tip for us?
Yeah, this might be a little bit like confrontational, or people might not. It's non-conventional, but I've just recently started to think about this. I'm starting to believe the concept of balance is completely ludicrous. I am not a balanced person. I give more on certain ideas in certain areas than other ones, and I'm okay with that. My tip would be to be okay when when things don't completely balance out or level out how you think they should. Because I think what we assume as balance in our head is very different than what reality is. In my mind, I should have an equal balance between my family, my girlfriend, my work, jujitsu. They should all have a certain amount of time. And what I'm realizing is from week to week, that is completely different. And it might not always be, everyone gets 100, they get their specific allotted time. That's perfectly fine because I can adjust it the next week and the next week. So I would say be okay with more flexibility, and also don't take yourself so seriously. 90% of the time, nobody cares but you. Whether you're competing on the mat and you just got tapped out, nobody is watching. Whether you fall and bust your face, nobody is watching. Whether you invest money and it tanks and you make a terrible bet and it's wrong, nobody cares unless you tell them. Just don't take things so seriously and just let it go.
I love it. All right, Jess, do you have an off the mat tip for us?
Yeah, it can be an offer on the mat tip. Something I've been experiencing lately so I'm just going to put out a disclaimer that I don't feel old in any capacity, but just turning 36, I'm not recovering the way that I used to. And I think that is a boundary that I've had to put up for myself, and that I have had to actually ask other teammates to put up, or I've had to put them up to other teammates as well, saying like, no, I will not be rolling 4 days a week because I'm also lifting maybe 3 to 4 days a week. And I'm having enough respect for my body nowadays where I don't want it to break, and I want to do it for a very long time. And I say this because I did break, and it took such a long time to get back to the mats, and I don't want to feel that way anymore. So the hustle and grind mentality of jiu-jitsu I'm just going to say, if you're not close to the same age bracket, like if we're looking at 30 and up, just kind of like chill. Not everyone has to roll hard every single time. Not everyone wants to fight through something. Not everyone, you are not less worthy because you didn't roll through something. Like, and I'm experiencing that personally. And I think I've experienced it for the past year where I'm just kind of like, hey, we're going to do a hard stop because I'm not recovering the way that I should or the way that I used to. So something has to change, and it's me. And I don't appreciate you coming at me all the time saying, why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? It's like, because today is a rest day and I'm going to respect my actual recovery and rest day.
Good.
So yeah, at my old people. I'm not old. I don't think I'm old, but man, when you do jujitsu, like you're 9 or so for me. And I'm just like, nope, that is not the bounce back that I had at all.
That must be the luxury I have at starting at 47, because there was never a bounce back. So I've never even known what it was like.
Every time I do Muay Thai, I feel like the oldest person and I'm like one of the youngest people in my gym. Like we go and then like in between, I'm just like on the corner, like, oh my God. And everyone else is still like bouncing around, like shadow box. I'm like, how are you doing this?
I just want to lay down.
My arms hurt. I don't want to do this anymore.
So I'm sure there are going to be a bunch of listeners that want to connect with you even before camp. So where's the best place to hang out with you on social media?
I said I was going to change it and then I didn't. At boss _a_Saurus, SAURUS on Instagram.
Don't ever change that.
I can't because it's from Dinosaur Saucers and it only aired for one season. The Bossosaur was the main guy. He was a T-Rex. Y'all are
She's very passionate about it.
It was a big deal when I was 4.
Obviously, it's 32 years later. You're still just as passionate.
On it.
So dope.
Where can we find you, Torrie?
Dude, where can you not find me? So mostly you can find me on Instagram and throwing straight heat at Torrie O'Neill. And I'm also have a Facebook page, Torrie the Grappler. And if you want to get with the Mighty Dames, it's at the Mighty Dames on Facebook, Instagram. And we also have a private group. It's the Mighty Dames Big Girl Jiu-Jitsu crew, which is awesome to join. So it is women only, but that includes trans, non-binary people as well. Yeah, I think that's, YouTube. And you can get me on YouTube at Torrie the Grappler and at the Mighty Dames as well. We have something drop on AJ soon. So yeah, go over there.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. We will have links to that in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you want to connect with me, I'm always hanging out on Instagram at Brassy Broad Jen. And you can find me with AJ at Beauty and the Gi Podcast on Instagram.
And I'm AJ Klingerman. Everywhere you go. You can also find us on Instagram at Role Model Grappling. That's ROLL.
Thanks for listening, and we will see you on the mat.